Shalom, Gabe Greenberg here, Rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel in New Orleans, Louisiana, studying with you this week the commentary of the Netziv on the weekly Torah portion. This week, parshat Vayetze, chapter 29, verse 18 in Genesis. Last week, Rebekah told her son Jacob to flee because Rebekah's other son, Esav, was going to kill Jacob over the matter of the stolen or seized birthright. Rebekah had said to Jacob at the time, "Go and stay with my brother Lavan for yamim achadim, for some amount of time, some amount of days." That was a vague term, and the Netziv here is going to think about that term and try to help us clarify it. In our Parsha, the Torah states, "Vaye'ehav Yaakov et Rachel," Jacob loved Rachel, Vayomer evadcha sheva shanim, and he said, "I will work for you, Lavan, for 7 years, birachel bitcha, for the hand of your daughter Rachel in marriage." Rashi, the great commentary, cites the Midrash, "Hem yamim achadim she'amra lo imo." When Jacob says, "I'll work for you, Lavan, for 7 years," he is giving a precise measurement for the vague term that his mother, Rebekah, had previously used. When she had said, "Go and be with Lavan for some amount of time," here Jacob is saying, what is that amount of time? 7 years, sheva shanim. And then Rashi says, Shahare ksiv, we know this is true, Shahare ksiv, v'hiyu be'enav ki yamim achadim. We know that this is correct because in 2 verses from now, the Torah tells us, V'yavod Yaakov berachel sheva shanim. Jacob indeed worked for Rachel, for her hand, for 7 years. V'yiyu ve'enav ki yamim achadim. And it was in his eyes like a passing of some amount of days. Rashi says, it's the same terminology used here, yamim achadim, as was used earlier with Rebekah. This is a great proof that the Midrash is correct, that 7 years is the amount of time referred to earlier. Our commentator that we are going to look at, the Netziv, says, I don't like that answer. It doesn't make sense. Kashali. It's confusing to me. It's problematic. De'im kain, for this, if this is so, heich mashma lashon ki yamim achadim. Halo hu yamim achadim. The Netziv's problem is as follows. If, as Rashi and the Midrash want to claim that Yamim Achadim is the clarification of the amount of time that Rebekah had referred to earlier, then it doesn't make sense that the Torah would say that in Jacob's eyes these 7 years passed like some days. That makes it sound like it's a subjective understanding for Jacob that the 7 years were like several or some amount of days. If it was true what Rashi and the Midrash are saying, that the Torah should simply say, and the 7 years were these some days. Not that they were in his eyes like it. That is to say, for the Netziv, the problem here is a conflation of the objective amount of 7 years with the subjective understanding for Jacob of some days. Which is it? Is the 7 years really the fulfillment of these some amount of days, or was it only like that for Jacob? So the Netziv doesn't like that answer and offers his own, as follows. Mishum destam yamim mashma me'et la'et. Generally speaking, when the Torah says yamim, days, that means a 24-hour period. That is what a day is as we know it. Rak lefamim mashma yamim lashon shana. Only sometimes does a day not mean a 24-hour period? Does it mean more than that, like a year or some other vague amount of longer period of time? He then gives a couple examples of this in the Torah. Jacob knew that his mother Rebekah meant this more uncommon example of the usage of yamim, days, when she said, go stay with Lavan for some amount of days, some amount of time, some amount of years. In fact, she meant 7 years. Veha desheva nikra achadim. Now, if that is true, why does she say some days and not 7 days. And now the Netziv gives a very inventive and creative answer. He says that a full period of 7 years is described as a shavua. In modern Hebrew, a shavua is a week. In the Torah, a shavua is a unit of measurement, a grouping of 7. You can have a shavua of yamim, of days, like in the week. We say, as he says, Mishum da'ad sheva shleimot me'et l'et nikrab mispar. When you're counting up to a week, you count shnayim, shlosha, 2, 3, 4. Masha'en kain sheva shleimot. When you reach 7, you say me'et l'et nikra shavua. 7 periods of 24 hours we call a shavua, a week. That's a shavua yamim. There's also a shavua of shanim, a grouping of 7 of years. For instance, in the part of Tanakh which refers to the sabbatical cycle, the Shemitah cycle, a shavua can be a grouping of 7. So 7 years, the fact that Jacob says, E'evadcha sheva shanim, I will work for you for 7 years, and not a shavua, is because he understood this to mean less than a full 7-year period. Really, 6 years plus. And he brings a great proof text to this, which is that later in the Parsha, once Lavan has fooled Jacob into taking Rebekah as his partner and not Rachel, Lavan says, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Finish this shavua and then work for me another 7 years with Rachel as your partner. Now, this notion that Jacob should finish this shavua, this is verse 27, malei shavua zot, fulfill the rest of this shavua. For most commentators, what that means is finish this week, this 7-day period, meaning the celebratory week of having Rebekah as your wife, what we might call today the week of Sheva Brachot, that celebratory 7-day period. And that is how most commentators understand it, including Rashi. But the Netziv, quite creatively, says no, the Shavua is the full 7-year period that as of yet had not been fulfilled because Jacob had only worked this 6 years plus, which is why he uses the terminology of Sheva Shanim, which, as I said earlier, indicates less than 7 years, because were it to be a full 7 years, Jacob would have originally used the terminology of Shavua. So according to the Netziv, Malei Shavua Zot means work from now until Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah will be the fulfillment of the first 7-year period, and then work a second 7-year period. The Netziv is the only commentator I've seen that has this understanding, this way of seeing Shavua in verse 27 to mean the end of the first 7-year period. So the Netziv jumps off from a small grammatical point. What does it mean to say kit yamim achadim be'enav, that working the first 7 years for Rachel was like some days in the eyes of Jacob? And he uses that to explain several other pieces here in our Parsha to solve both these grammatical readings and therefore to give us a more interesting and creative read that no one else that I'm familiar with offers here on the Parsha. So that's indicative of the Netziv's general approach, that he's interested in grammatical questions. He's also willing to have more inventive and innovative readings that go against the established understandings of the earlier sages. Shabbat Shalom, have a good week, and we will see you next week.